Archaeological dig is a fantastic way for getting kids enthusiastic about history and a history topic. They get hands-on, they get involved, and they can be archaeologists for the day. Right, today you're going to be archaeologists. I want you to think about what we've been learning about the Vikings. The children come into the classroom and there's an archaeological dig set up on the floor. This can just be a simple sand pit. And I've buried objects into the sand. The children then take it in turns to come and unearth them and discover these sort of buried treasures. They then decide whether they think it's Viking or not Viking, based on what they already know. Let's see what the first object that I find is. Okay. Do you think that could be a Viking object?
No.
Why not?
It looks like a Roman head.
I think it's quite important to maybe put in a few other objects as red herrings, so that if they do find an object that's not Viking, they're able to tell you why. They're drawing on those skills and those things that they've already learnt in order to make a decision on what they've found. So we're going to say no, okay? So the first group that I'm going to choose is this table. Archaeological dig is a really good way of kick-starting a history project. It gets the kids very hands-on. It's different to something that they'd normally do in class. Okay, what have you found?
Coins.
What do we think? Do we think they could be Viking? Saffron?
No, because we already knew that they used to make their clothes and stuff, so we didn't need to buy it, so they wouldn't have used money.
So you're saying that they make everything themselves, so they might not have had to go and pay for things. What do the rest of you think? Sam?
Possibly because Vikings used to trade.
Good word, trade. They might have used money, they might have used coin. Good thinking, Sam. So, what I want you to do now, girls, I want you to take your find to your table, because we're going to be looking at it in closer detail later. There's definitely a sense of discovery. You know, they're finding things. It makes it so much more exciting for them than just working through a worksheet or looking at a screen. Okay, so what's the object that you found in there?
Ring.
Do you think that's likely to be Viking or not Viking?
Viking.
You think it's Viking. Why do you think that?
Because they've got like Viking patterns.
Where else have you seen that kind of pattern? Have you seen
On the clothes.
Do you remember we looked at their weapons and we looked at those swords that they made?
Yeah.
That had quite intricate patterns on it as well. Okay guys, do you want to take that back to your table? Okay, let's have another group up. Okay, what have you found? Can you describe what it looks like for us?
It looks like a hammer that Thor had that we did the story on.
So it looks like Thor, one of the gods, it looks like his hammer that we looked at. This is a really great cross-curricular lesson. They're bringing in their speaking and listening skills from literacy, they're bringing in some scientific knowledge, and my class were actually bringing in some of their knowledge of the Viking gods that they'd learnt about. And it's just a way of bringing everything that they'd maybe learnt in different subjects all together in this one lesson. The first thing I want you to do is do a very detailed picture of your object. It's a really good idea to have a sheet with prompt questions on. I tend to ask them things like what they think the object is, what they think it was used for, and maybe who might have used an object like that. And then we get them to start thinking about, what does that then tell us about life in Viking times from looking at that object? What have you decided that your object is?
A Viking jug, because we knew that they had like sheep and cows and they might have used the animal bones.
What do you think this tells us about life in Viking times?
They had to hand make their jugs.
So anything that they needed, they'd have to make it themselves. I love this lesson because it's just so exciting to deliver. You're almost taking part in that discovery with them as they're unearthing the objects, and it just makes the teaching of history so much more fun.
This exercise is called Viking Comic Strip, and the real purpose is that it allows children not only to piece together things that actually happened in the past, but it's a chance for them to empathise with the people who are actually involved. We are going to be creating our very own Viking comic strip. We're going to take the events of a Viking raid that we looked at yesterday, and you're going to be turning those sentences that explain the Viking raid into a little freeze frame that we're going to put into a comic strip. It can be useful for younger children, especially if they are reenacting something they are familiar with. They've got the narrative already down in their heads. That way you can really focus on the empathy part of the lesson. What I really want you to think about is the different people who are going to be in your part of the story. What might they be thinking? Why am I saying what might they be thinking? Alex?
Because it might not be what they thought at that time.
How do we know?
Because there's no evidence.
Bravo! We don't know for certain, do we? But we're acting like historians. We are piecing... The most important thing about a Viking comic strip is that it allows children to explore not just the events that happened, but then critically consider how each party might have felt by the things that they would be thinking and the things they would be saying. I'm going to give you a few minutes to find out which part of the story have we got to turn into a comic strip. And I'm going to give you some time to play around, deciding who's going to be who, doing all the action pieces, all the poses, what you think people would look like.
Joe, start sneaking over. Who's going to be the punchman? Who's going to be the punchman? Me. Maybe one of us can be surrendering to the other Viking.
So you've got one monk who's surrendering, and you've got another monk who's actually taking the Vikings on.
What would you be looking like if you had seized the treasure? How would you be looking?
To make it more interesting, the children have a card, and in the inside of the card is the speech or thought bubble, and they write what they think their character could be feeling or saying, and then they close the card, and on the front is another empty speech or thought bubble, and it's the class's job to fill in the empty one. So you've just seen the Viking ship come towards your home. So what might you be thinking?
Let's go and get all the other monks.
Once the class have considered what they think the character is feeling or thinking, we can open up the card and see if the two marry up. What, Josh, is this Viking here thinking in his longboat?
They can't stand a chance against us.
Why do you think he might be thinking that?
Because they haven't got any weapons.
Now that's really interesting. Max is thinking about the history that he's learnt, and he's using that to inform what he thinks a Viking could be thinking. So we said you were going to say, they don't stand a chance against us. In fact, you are really thinking...
If we don't get the treasure, we will be in trouble.
So totally different, isn't it? The children really enjoy if the class has not guessed what they thought their character was thinking. And it just re-emphasises the point of the lesson that people interpret facts in so many different ways. Okay, so get into your positions. What you can do is, after each child's got their own comic strip in their books, you can do it again on the whiteboard. That way, there's a definitive version of the comic strip, and the children love seeing it on the big screen. This comic strip activity lends itself to any kind of period of history where change occurred, and the whole part of history is looking at changes in our world.
We're going to be doing this morning more work about our Vikings. And we're going to be playing a game called... Norse or Not Norse. Very good, excellent. So, Norse or Not Norse is a game I've devised to make history fun. But it's also a game that gives the children a chance to do something they don't get to do in school very often, which is to lie. And it's to come up with persuasive and plausible arguments or explanations of objects, Viking objects, to persuade their friends in the class. Chance, da-da-da-da. To lie. Ooh. Okay, how are we going to do it? Well, let's have a look. We're going to be looking at examples of real objects that were made by the Vikings. With each object, there will be a real explanation, but then you've got to make up the false explanation. So can you fool your friends? Right. Some of the things I do at the beginning is to introduce particular language. So it extends their literacy as well as the language relating to history, which gives fantastic cross-curricular links as well. Explanation. Now, plausible means believable. So what plausible explanation can we come up with? Let's have Josh.
It could have been a close-up of one of their pens that they used.
So it's an early Viking pen. Fantastic. I think it's a great idea. What was it about the photograph that made you say pen?
It looks like the dark black bit is some sort of charcoal.
Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to go back to your tables and fill in one of these sheets for the real object, and then, using the same object that you've got on your table, you've got to make up the one to fool your friend, and write that down. Okay, folks, so back to your tables.
And from there came up with matching kings. It was using a wagon or a sledge. It was made in the Viking Knights, 10th century.
The thinking behind Norse or not Norse is getting the children to be able to look at objects, any details that they can see, and to use sources to make credible explanations as to what objects and artefacts were used for.
It could be a tortoise's shell that was decorated by the Vikings. Yeah. It could be used for a mask for a wedding if they marry someone. It could have been a hairband.
For this lesson, it's good that the children have got some background knowledge. For example, they're going to be needing to know about materials, the uses of objects, some aspects of Viking society, what they did. And that background information is very useful, making the whole thing plausible and so they can interpret the objects they see.
I think people will believe us because it looks like a bendy metal, so they can bend it.
So the next thing I do is get the children to read their explanations out, the true and the false ones, and then to put it to a class vote. And one explanation is red, one is green, and the children have to vote according to that colour. And we have the green explanation first.
What is it? It is a brush. What is it made from? It is made from wood.
Thank you very much. Explanation number 2.
It is a bone pin. What is it made from? The pin was made from a pig bone.
So, Norse or not Norse? Those people who think it's the Viking brush, vote green. Those who think it's a Viking pin, vote red. Vote now, please. Oh, very even. I get the feeling maybe just the green edging it. Okay, hands down. Will the true explanation please step forward now? They fooled you. I find lessons like this constantly surprise me because of the imagination that children have and the ideas they come up with, particularly in history. Show me by your thumbs. I know more, I don't know anything at all. Show me now. History lends itself really well to this because they've got so much creativity in them, and it's a really great way of teaching history.